Hey there, everyone. This is Sharon. So, today, what I want to bring to you is grief and gratitude does coexist. And what this is really a dedication that I have every year for my mom since she's graduated from the planet Earth. And so, throughout the year, I do have some grief and gratitude workshops, and I've done some for another platform or doing on my own platform. And it is a way to know that grief and gratitude can coexist. And so today, what I really want to focus on is talk about grief, gratitude, and working, especially, whether you're an entrepreneur, regular worker, especially for those individuals who are in leadership, this can have two folds. First of all, what I want to do is, again, this is a dedication for my mother, Carolyn Brown Limore, and she transitioned in 2020, December 18th. And so I either have a workshop or have this dedication or have something, even if I'm just talking about grief and gratitude. So let me share this. I want to share collateral beauty. And I really will encourage everyone who's a human to watch that movie because it is just profound. It's a movie with Will Smith, and it is just, I don't want to say anything about it. I just think it's a movie. It is dealing with grief. I truly believe everyone needs to watch it because it shows, I would say this much, the different side of grief. And so, collateral beauty, love, time, and death interlock in a life fully filled, fully lived, and how even the deepest loss can reveal moments of meaning and beauty. I'm going to read that again. Love, time, and death interlock in a life fully lived, and how even the deepest loss can reveal moments of meaning and beauty. And again, this is dedication to my mom on the day that she graduated Earth. So, what I want to kind of talk about, and all of this intertwine when it comes to talking about grief, and it's grief in working, grief in being someone in leadership, grief in being someone in authority, grief in being an entrepreneur. At the time of my mother's passing, um, I was working for one of the local hospitals. And one thing I will say is that they definitely had given me grace, had given me the opportunity to grieve. Um, and what I want to do is kind of just talk about like where you are with grief. I truly believe that that is something that's very important to be able to identify. Um, and of course, each person grieves differently. And we always do want the space to be able to grieve. And I want to say it is multi level. What I will say is important for you to take up space to grieve. And then at the same time, it may not be where you may think it should be. And the reason I say that is because when it comes to any business, you know how they say the show must go on? For those around you, if you have experienced a loss, your life, and especially if there's family, still goes on. So it's kind of like, how do you navigate that? Because at the same time, depending, um, I probably had more of a difficult, pretty much not having the emotional capacity to do my job if I would have had to be there before my mom passing because of everything that was going on before her passing. And so I say that to say, we do want jobs. We want to create jobs in a workplace where we can honor that, because sometimes people may not be in an emotional place, have the emotional capacity to do their job well. And especially when, like it's a safety issue, dealing with other people and things of that sort. So, this is not one that's going to really give you answers, because there's really not any perfect answer, because each situation is different, but at least give you, as a entrepreneur, as a person in leadership, as a person in business, and if you were an employee, I guess you could say something to process, something to think about. And again, it really depends, on each situation. And so the other thing is that someone can be at their job, but they're just present, meaning they're not able to really produce, they're making mistakes. They may have a blank stare and not really able to really do their job. And then what ends up happening is what a lot of times people end up, like getting written up because they're not producing and they're making mistakes. And especially, I mean, there can be some really serious mistakes, especially when you're dealing with numbers or dealing with people, or something gets forgotten because someone like didn't have the opportunity to take time off before a passing of a close relative, or went back to work too soon because of the impact that the death may have had. And again, these are things to consider, because as you grow your business, these, we want to give people time off to be able to do that. It depends on the business to a certain extent, or does it? You know what I mean? And one thing I want to add too, even as, whether you're solo or you have people working under you, let's say it's you, and can you take the time off? And there are times in which you may be able to, and you may not be able to. Mm. And there's so many things that kind of goes into that, because society says, oh, you should, but then literally you, what you have to do and offer, put food on your table and for those around you, and especially if you have others who work for you as well. And so how do you navigate in having and experiencing grief and gratitude, when it comes to that? And so it's like, do you have the emotional capacity to be able to do that? Are you present? And are you being, are you able to be productive? And when I say productive, not in the sense of just doing the job, but being productive of yourself, when it comes to navigating grief. And so this is kind of like where the gratitude comes to play. And you're like, Sharon, but when? Because death can be like really, really hard for a lot of individuals. And so, in saying that, In saying that, it's part of it is how you, and not always, part of it is how you view death in the first place. And then it can be your connection, the bond that you have with the person, because you can have, you can view death in a certain way, meaning you really do accept it as a natural part of life, in which, we're all going to die, but a lot of individuals have a really hard time with it. And when I say that, it's meaning, it's almost like beyond the, I just say, I'm just going to leave it like that. Just have a really hard time, meaning that it can become, they can become depressed. And again, one of the reasons that I'm talking about this is because sometimes people have other people depending, on them. Let's say, a mother who may have had a husband or a child who dies, and it's like, how does that mother continue to do what needs to be done while they're grieving? Um, and for each person's death is different and depends on the circumstances. And so how you're able to walk through that, how you're able to navigate that, and it really depends on the individual. But one thing that I will say, again, as I mentioned before, some of it has to do with how you navigate, death, and how you navigate death when it comes to, especially someone in leadership. It has a lot to do with how you, if you create, rules and regulations and policies and procedures, how you navigate death really will, determine how you write those things out and even how you enforce. And of course, when it comes to the enforcing, you work for somebody else, you follow the rules there. But I will also say is, sometimes it depends, you know? And so, in saying that, when it comes to grief and gratitude, it's how can you help others to be able to navigate times of difficulty, giving them space for that, but then at the same time to help them to continue to live. Because one thing that we do know is that when you slow down too much, you become stagnated. And then that energy, that sadness, it increases, um, so much. And again, grieving is different for each person. And it's not, we always want to say it's time, but it's really what we do with the time. And again, for each person is different, like when my mother had passed, the grief was different, with my brother and I, and with my stepdad, like, oh yeah, we all took it hard, you know but I really do believe, because he lived with her, that he definitely, experienced a lot, and probably more so than I would know, as well. But just, shows you that we grieve differently. I know that with myself, when she passed, um, it was a sense of peace, because there was just so much suffering beforehand. But it was almost like I just felt her spirit. And to be honest, most of this week, I felt like I felt her spirit before today came. It was, I come across somebody who pretty much has some very similar, mannerism as her, talking, the way that she spoke. came across somebody who looked like her, and I'm like, are we related? you know? And I just felt her spirit. And definitely, I would say today is a divine blessing in so many different ways. And so, again, everyone grieves different, even from the same family. And so, how can we hold on to allow someone the emotional capacity to work through something, but at the same time, to be able to see the connection of how something impacted them, in such a wonderful way. And kind of going back to collateral beauty, love, time, and death, when it interlocks, in which it can reveal moments of meaning and beauty. And sometimes that may only happen in death, you know? Um, and so, in saying all of that, um, again, as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as leaders, it's like, how, if you've had anyone who passed, how were you able to navigate that yourself and run a business? It's like, how do you do that? And one thing that I can say is that this life has so much to give. And even with death, because it's a part of it, it's a natural part of it, in that I'll say this, probably the best way. Like, for whatever reason, this year I kind of feel like maybe like the saddest moment that I felt. I mean, yes, when she passed, I was sad. But like I said, I felt a peace the year after. You think about, when I think about her throughout, time, but maybe because I felt her spirit, this week. And so I would say, just in thinking about her more deeply, just feeling that emotional connection, and, like, sometimes some people, they think that because you're thinking about someone who passed away, that it's sadness. And I wouldn't call it a sadness. Like, it saddens me that she's not here physically. But I know that, oh, she's all through me and connected. And so, what about you? Like, how do you navigate through that? But you still got to get things done, kind of going back to her passing, in that pretty much probably 2 weeks before her passing. I took off work, had to, travel to find out what was going on. There were other family members as well. And I'm glad that I was able to have that. And then I also had scheduled leave like 2 weeks after that. So I had the opportunity to have 3 weeks off. And I was asked, was I still going to take, that week that I already had scheduled off? And I decided I did. I had the time. Um, and everything. And the way that I looked at it is that, hey, I already had that time off, in which it was already scheduled. So, they already had to find someone to work for me, during that time period. Of course, the 2 weeks before that, you know, they or to say, things had to happen. And so those are things to really think about. Of course, during the grieving, it came across my mind, but I had to not think about it as the person who was experiencing that. I was definitely very appreciative of having the time off, and for everyone who covered, for me. And I thank them, once I returned, of giving me the support that I needed. um Also, what I can say is, as a business owner, and I hear people talk, and that one thing I say is, it is not an easy role to be in. as someone in charge, you know? And I would say it's not an easy role, or it's not an easy experience as an employee, or even again as a business owner, you know? It's let's just say you're solo and it's determined, you know, your livelihood is determined on you and depends on, you know, where your bank account is. Can you afford to take time off? And so this is where sometimes it can get a little icky, you know. We pretty much expect and need and we want that time off, and granted for jobs that have that leeway, but not all jobs are like that, because sometimes some jobs you really need the person. And again, with this segment of grief and gratitude, this is a little different than I've done in the past. In the past, I talked more about my mom and the lessons that I've learned, and this is kind of the same. It's just different. And I guess you could say the lesson that I've learned in this situation is it's not an easy decision. And I would encourage individuals. I would encourage you to listen to Secrets to Success podcast with Eric Thomas. I would say Eric Thomas and crew. Eric Thomas, CJ, Jamal, and I can't think of the other person's name. I can't think of his name right now, so sorry about that, sir. But Eric had talked about twice, and I don't remember which episode that it was on, but he talked twice about someone dying. He was talking about a friend who had someone close to him die, and that friend took 30 days off. And I think that Eric looked at him kind of sideways, you know, and I understand what Eric was saying about that, because it's kind of like, you know, no job can really afford, and when they say afford, not in the sense of the money part of it, but it's really the person, because it means it's a domino effect that when someone is off for extended period of time, you know, especially unexpectedly, and I always say depends on the kind of job that it is, that you know other people have to come in and things like that. Kind of very similar to the 2 weeks before, you know, my mom passing. And so those are things to think about. And then the other thing that he talked about, far as I can remember, is when there was a death in, I can't remember if it was him or his wife, and a decision they had to make of whether or not they were going to be there or not. And to be honest, right now, I can't remember everything. I'm bringing it up just to show you that, you know, there are real situations that people have to deal with. And I want to say that because of timing and travel, that they decided they couldn't make their funeral, but they were able to do something thereafter or something like that. And then I think it depended on the relationship. And so again, when it comes to grieving someone's passing of a loved one or a friend, in that, how do we navigate that as leaders? How do we navigate that as entrepreneurs? How do we navigate that as business owners for ourselves? And then if you have employees, how do you do that? And you know, I can really see both sides, because again, with that guy who had taken 30 days off from work, I believe it was his mother who passed. In that, did he really have the emotional capacity to be at work? Would he have really been fully himself? Yeah, you can. I kind of say, yeah, if you have a job when you're scooping something, you know, you may be able to do that, but a lot of time, but even in scooping, sometimes you may not see, because it may supposed to be a certain size, you know, so you may be putting in too much and too little, then you get written up because of they ran out of whatever it is that you were scooping, you know. So again, when it comes to self-care, it's having the awareness of where you are, being able to acknowledge where you are emotionally or what you're able to really take on or not take on. And hopefully you work out a place, if you are an employee, to be able to process that, and they are able to ask. And I know it's a little, I guess you could say, I don't want to say funny, but it's a little something about that too, because when leaders, supervisors and managers, we have to be careful how they ask questions, and things like that because of, policies and things. And so it's like you could check in. It's like this human thing, We are multifaceted for real. Oh, so much for us, right? So again, acknowledge where you are when it comes to the passing of someone, and even when it comes to the anniversary, because that can be something as well. And I would say when it comes to the anniversary, that can be something you may be able to prepare for a little bit. Of course, you never know how it's going to hit per se, but just compared to the passing of, that's something. And to use discernment, and when I say that, meaning to use discernment of whether are you able to have, do you have the emotional capacity to do the work? Are you just going to be present? Are you able to produce? Are you moody? I'm saying moody. Are your mood changing? Because the sadness is just so much. It was just so much. Again, in using discernment of how much you're able to truly be yourself around people. The other thing is, sometimes people may want to be alone, or sometimes they may need support. And so, for those of you who may have lost someone, again, be honest with yourself of where you are, and just know you're not alone. Like, you're not the only person who's experiencing. Of course, it's your experience, but just meaning that you're not the only person, and there's someone somewhere out there who can um, offer some type of support. And if you know someone, just offer support, even if they don't accept it. Just offer it so that they know that. Now, one thing I will say, even though I say I'm always contradicting myself, right? Because we live in a world of duality. There's so many different possibilities when it comes to things. And so, in saying all of that, is to say that even though you may um decide, I believe I lost my train of thought. I really did. I really did. I was going somewhere with that, but hey, this is what I like about being human. I know I was talking about being human and we're multifaceted, in the sense of, it's still not coming to me. But again, use discernment of whether or not that you're able to do the things that you're responsible for doing. And even in your home, even though I'm talking about work, as a entrepreneur, business owner, or leader, but even in your home life, it's like what type of support that you can. I know where I'm going with this now. It's come back to me in that you may not always be able to get support from other people because of the fact they may be grieving something. They may not have the emotional capacity. And a lot of times people just don't know how to support someone who is grieving, who has lost someone. Some people are pretty good at it, but some people are not. And so, depending on your surroundings, depending on your support group, because even with your support group, they could be going through something too. And so, for anyone who's been following me for a while, know that I'm all about self care. Everything always comes back to us. So you're like, well, Sharon, if I'm here for myself, this is where, your self care rituals and practices and routines really come into play, because they're going to help you come through things. They're going to help you ask for help, go and get some type of help. If that's what you need, ask for support. Now, I probably should say it in that way. Ask for support when you need it, and know when you need to rest, and know when you need to move. And so that is the difference of constantly learning about yourself, constantly doing the things that you need to do to take care of yourself. And part of that is challenging yourself as well, and meaning in preparing yourself. We don't talk about death a whole lot. Um, and I think we should talk about it more to prepare emotionally and prepare financially. And that's another story that I have to share with you all one of these days when it comes to the financial part, not regarding my mom, but just meaning. And so, in saying that, yes, ask support, but also sometimes you may be the only support that you have because other people could be going through something that you just may not be aware of that. And so, again, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a leader, how do you navigate grief? And again, this is gratitude. This is grief and gratitude. And one of the things that I have done, again, this is dedicated to my mom. So this is how I am grateful for what she has done for me throughout her life. This is, throughout my life. And she's still having an impact, on me. And so I really, really, really appreciate everything. And I just feel that it's so important for you to continue to pour into yourself, to do the things that you need to do to take care of yourself. And if anything that I've learned now, later in life, is that it's challenges that help us more so than anything else, because it really helps us to have the emotional capacity to live a fully lived life when grief comes, when death comes, when other things come. And to be able to live and just not be alive, especially when other people may be counting on you. In that, again, to be able to create that space where you're able to grieve, but to also to be able to see the beauty of life in that person. And I know that each passing of a person is so different, especially um, I just say when other things may have been involved. But one thing that I do want to say is that when it comes to grief, you have the capacity to be able to experience it and to experience gratitude of the person. And how much I want to say in due time, what I will say is the more that we live, the more that you live. Because when you're stagnated, even in grief, it decreases your life, and it can decrease the lives of others. And so, how can you navigate your existence in a way where you can live and not be stuck? And again, one of the things that I do is that I really think about all the goodness the good experiences, which they all have been, I must say, with my mom. And then also in that how I will want to be remembered, and how I know how she will want to be remembered. And that definitely carries me on. And anyone who's watched any of these grief and gratitudes before, one thing I have said is that because of the way that I have thought about death even before her passing, and since her passing, that has not changed. Just meaning that I've always looked at it as a natural part of life. And that might be why I felt such a peace. And like I say, I really, feel her spirit, all this week coming. And so for each of you, especially as entrepreneurs, as leaders, as business owners, really sit with yourself and think about, how do you view death? Because that's going to determine how, like, what policies you put in place in your own workplaces, and then if you are an employee somewhere else, in a leadership role, how you enforce all of that as well. And it's kind of like how to have compassion for someone. And like I say, I don't have any answers when it comes to that, because there is a duality. It's like the job needs to get done, people need to be fed, and how does someone navigate that when they're experiencing? And the main thing that I can tell you, though, the more that you pour into yourself for life, it helps. Not saying you and I experienced anything, but the only thing I can say is that it helps. It either helps you get help, and there are many grief communities, and I would definitely encourage anyone who's experiencing grief to be able to do that. And again, when it comes to grief and gratitude, the ones that I've held in the past, it's different format from this, um, but it will give you that space to be able to share, the experiences, and to also to be able to release that energy of the grieving part of it. And so, look forward to future, shall I say, workshops offering for grief and gratitude. Again, it's not this setup here. It's more, of a workshop with meditation, with restorative yoga, with community sharing, where you have the opportunity, to process what death is for you, what grief is, and also gratitude, because there are some people that really believe or don't think about those coexisting. And we all do process um, death differently, and I respect all of that. And but I want to say I also respect the living as well. And so, with the spirit of your loved ones, carry it in your heart. And as with collateral beauty, again, love, time, death, interlock in a life fully lived, and how even the deepest loss can reveal moments of meaning and beauty. And that is how I want to remember my mom, want to live in that. So I hope that you can do the same. And definitely like and share this video with others, because I know others can benefit from it. And this may be a video that you may need to go back to and listen. It's like, how, when it comes to, being an entrepreneur, business owner, what policies do I have in place? Do I want to just follow the standard policy? Because sometimes, 2 to 3 days may not be enough, but then at the same time, work needs to be done, or that person may need to feed their family. And it's just, again, it's the duality of life. It's not just black and white so easy. And again, stagnating of not doing something, not moving, it can pretty much, I just leave it like this, it can pretty much leave a person in a stagnated, create a stagnated environment. And so I really do enjoyed everyone who had joined me. And again, thanks again, and enjoy your day.